Good morning, Stampers. It's Pat with Fearless Stamp and Flair. Welcome to Connect to Create. I'm here with a technique for you today that's very simple, fun, and maybe a little bit surprising. If you're new to Connect to Create, it's a collaboration between myself, Pat Fearless, from Fearless Stamp and Flair, like I said, and Kathy Ondas, a good friend and fellow demonstrator from Simply Cards by Kathy. And it's our goal to come each week to share a technique or a tip or a trick. We don't necessarily make the entire card, but we show you how to do the technique, and then we show you some cards that we've made using that technique. Now, I may take it a little bit further today and actually show you how to attach the technique to a card. I may not make the full card, but we may do a couple partial cards today. So welcome. The technique I'm going to share with you is called toilet paper embossing. And yes, you heard me correctly. It's toilet paper, something we all have in our house, or at least I hope we do. So it's readily available and it creates unique backgrounds. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me flip my camera down. Okay, so to do this technique, we don't need a lot of supplies. We obviously need toilet paper. We need a bottle with water for spritzing. We need some paper towel, and we need an embossing folder. So I'm going to start and use the Pretty Flowers embossing folder first. I'm going to do this twice for you with a couple, once with a regular embossing folder and then a second time with a 3D embossing folder. You can use either. Doesn't make a difference, and you will do them exactly the same way, just your sandwich changes as you put it through your embossing machine, just like when you're using cardstock. So to do this technique, I played around with it quite a bit, and I'll show you some of my practice samples a little bit later. What I found was that it worked best if I laid and built my layers on the debossed side of my folder. And the debossed side is the side with the Stampin' Up! Logo. When you feel it, you can feel that the indentations go in or away from you, down, as opposed to towards you on the embossed side. And the reason I found it works better was because we lay a piece of paper towel to absorb the moisture on the top of our layers. And if we lay them on this side, then the paper towels are against the front, which is going to be your image. And the paper towel leaves some added texture that we don't necessarily need. It doesn't hurt anything, but I just found I liked it better when I did it on this side. So that's what I'm going to do today. I have Cottonelle toilet paper. It's relatively thick and absorbent, so probably needs a little more water than some may. The number of layers we do will depend on the thickness of your toilet paper, so you may need to play around it and experiment a little bit. So the first thing we do is we just start building our layers. Now, Cottonelle has a quilted side and then a smoother side, so I'm putting the smoother side towards my folder, and then we just spritz. And we want to get this fairly wet, and when I say fairly, it's somewhere between damp and more than damp. You do not want it to be dripping or totally saturated with water, but you want it, when you lift it up, you want to feel like your hands come away and they're slightly wet, okay? So with my Cottonelle, I have typically used 4 or 5 layers. Sounds like a lot, but it kind of, the more layers you have, the better embossing impression you're going to get. Feels pretty good. So I'm just going to keep building here. That was 2. This is layer number 3. The other thing you want to watch a little bit is to don't have your toilet paper extending onto the other cover. Otherwise, when you close it, it bunches up in that fold area, and it's just harder to close the cover. So you want to keep it kind of so it doesn't fold over when you're in there. So I'm going to pull mine away just a little bit from the fold. And that was 3 layers. This is going to be layer number 4. And I do keep tending to push it further towards there. I don't know why. It's a bad habit, I guess. So continue to add layers and strips. And like I said, 4 or 5 seem to work best for my toilet paper. I will go ahead and do 5 on this one today. I'm getting low on my roll of toilet paper. I shouldn't have a spare here, but I think I have plenty. My dad used to have this saying that life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes. And I'm learning he was definitely correct about that. Just like the closer we get to the end of our toilet paper roll, the faster it goes too, right? So, okay, I have 5 layers of toilet paper on there. Now I'm going to add a paper towel. I've just used one section of paper towel, and I folded it over. And this is going to be to help absorb the moisture from the toilet paper as we run it through our embossing machine. So bring in my Stampin' Cut and Emboss. And I'm going to make a sandwich just like I would as if I was using a regular embossing folder with cardstock as opposed to toilet paper. So with the standard one, we use 2 plate number 3s and our folder. And what I've learned, sometimes I've seen people have trouble getting their sandwich started into their machine. So what I have found is if I stagger my bottom plate and my top plates each a little as I enter it, I have no problem getting it started. It starts very easily. So that's just that's a little extra tip today. Just if you have trouble, just kind of try to stagger your plates. Okay, I'm going slow. I'm going to go back one more time because this squeezes a lot of the water out down here into my excess toilet paper, right? So, and I like to go slow just to give it time to get a nice impression in the toilet paper. So let's take a look at this and see how it turned out. Can you see that? Isn't that pretty? It's very, very defined. I love how it turns out. The toilet paper or the paper towel on the back, you're just going to carefully pull that away and you can dispose of that. And then you're going to set your embossed toilet paper aside to dry. So I'm going to do 2 for you, like I said. I'm going to do one additional one with a 3D embossing folder. So we will do that exactly the same way. The folder I'm going to use is this one called Pretty Posies. I think it's what it's called. Painted Posies, not Pretty Posies. So again, we're going to build it the same way. I'm going to build it on the debossed side. Now here, this is wider than the toilet paper, so you have to pay attention to which part of your design you want. And I want this upper part, so I'm going to move my toilet paper up towards the top. And again, I'm going to do it the same way. I'm going to put my quilted side of my toilet paper up, just because I like the smoother side against the impression. If your toilet paper doesn't have quilting, then it won't matter which way you put it. It just happens to be the way Cottonelle is with the quilting. Okay, so we're going to continue to layer these. And I will do 5 layers again, just because that seems to work best with with my particular brand of toilet paper. This is layer number 3. And again, you spritz each time. I like to feel it to make sure it's wet. If you don't get it wet enough, then the layers don't stick together as well as if it's wet. But if it gets too wet, that's not good either. So it takes a little trial and error, and you'll have to do some trial and error with your particular toilet paper as well, because it may be different. Because the Cottonelle is very absorbent, and so I think it takes more water than some others might. So I like to tap it and feel, is my hand feel like it's wet? I don't want to be picking up a lot of water. I don't want it dripping with water. But I want it enough so that when you run it through that, and then it dries, the layers will stick together a little bit better. Okay, so this was layer number 5. Feels pretty good. Maybe a little on the wet side, but we'll give it a try. I'll layer my paper towel on here, close up my embossing folder, grab my stamp and cut and emboss again. And now we have a 3D embossing folder. So I need to use the base plate as always. Lay my folder down with the hinge towards the front. And then we use the specialty plate. And again, I'm going to stagger it just a bit, as it makes it easier to start it into the Stamp and Cut and Emboss. And if you ever find when you go to do this that it's turning too hard, check your layers, because your sandwich might be wrong. And I like to run it through slowly. Sorry for putting my hand on top, but I have to hold it somehow because my thing I'm sitting on is kind of wiggles. All right, and I'm going to run it back once more to make sure I get a nice impression. Okay, so let's get this out of the way. And let's take a look. You can see what our folder, what our embossed toilet paper looks like. So here's the paper towel. I don't know if you can see it, but it's pretty wet. Peel that off carefully. And I'll just pitch it and then pick this up carefully. This one is definitely wetter. Can you see the embossing on there? Isn't that pretty? It makes such a good impression. It's just amazing. And then you have to set them aside to dry. And they do take a while to dry. I prefer to let them dry without assist from a heat tool. You can use your heat tool, but it seemed to work better if I just let it dry naturally. And I actually found overnight worked well. You can do it probably 3 hours or so would be fine. But when I let them dry overnight, that seemed to work best. So get rid of my water. We're done with water. And now I'm going to go to the first one that we did with the pretty flowers. I'm going to dry piece of paper back up here. And here's the first one we did. Obviously, I made this one previously so that it would be dry. But I want to show you a couple ways now of how we attach these and use them on a card. This is the card that I made using this particular embossing folder. This is the art gallery flower, and then the background card is embossed with the pretty flowers, and this is my toilet paper piece here. So I'm going to show you how to attach your toilet paper. And here's the cardstock. I'm going to flip. I'm going to put this on here, okay, and then wrap it. But let me show you the easiest way to do that, because obviously there's way too much material. So let's get some adhesive on here. And I am not a liquid glue person. I definitely prefer snail, because I get this stuff all over my hands. And then I have sticky fingers always. So with this particular design, see, I got glue on my paper right there already, which I don't like. It doesn't really matter which section I use. I'll probably just lay it over. Since the flower is going to be on this side, I'm going to use more of this side over here. But the most important thing is when you put this on, you want to have at least about 1/2 inch of extra toilet paper around the edges. And the easiest way is just to then use a large scissors. You can use your paper snips, but a bigger scissors seems to be more efficient and just cuts it a little bit better. So I'm just going to cut this all the way around here. About 1/2 inch. And if we've got a ragged edge like I have here, I hope you can, maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. I like to cut that off. Okay, get rid of those, and then we'll go back to our glue. And I'm going to glue 2 sides over at a time. Now, one thing I would suggest is you may want to trim your corners just a bit to help reduce the amount of bulk you have to get there in the corner. It kind of seems to help a little bit. So I'll add a little bit of glue on each edge. And then just fold this over and hold it for a second or so while it dries. And if your layers start to lift, like this one seems like on this side it wants to lift, so just add a little glue in there to help hold it down. It probably means when I did it, I didn't have quite enough water. Normally, if you don't get enough water on it, then the layers don't mold together as well as if they do, as if you have more water. So that's why it's kind of, you need to play around a little bit to figure out just how much water you need with your toilet paper. Okay. Hold that for a second. And I can feel that this one is not, it's not super stuck together, my layers, so we'll just fix that with glue. This will never show on the back side anyway. Okay, hold this just a second. All right, and flip it over, and we have the completed piece with nice finished edges. And then you can adhere it to your card and create a pretty background. So that's the first card. I'm going to show you. The second one is this card, and this is the one I made with the painted posies. And in this case, I'm going to finish the toilet paper off with a frame as opposed to wrapping it around. And here I also embossed the frame so it looks like an extension of the toilet paper. And what I'm going to do is show you how to do that. So the first thing I need to do is, let's go ahead and take my toilet paper and we'll figure out which portion of the image I want to use. And I kind of want to use this section here. So I want to, on the back side, I want to glue, or yeah, with my liquid glue, I'm going to adhere this basic white cardstock on the back in approximately that location. So let me add glue on here. And lay it over the image about where you want it. And then I'm going to set this aside while I die cut the frame so that this glue gets dry. Okay, so now we're gonna cut and emboss this frame, the pool party frame. So I'll do my Stampin' Cut Emboss back in. And what I'm using, that was made with the 4th largest stitched rectangle die. So I need my Thinlet or whatever page, number 2 and number 3. We'll put my pool party on here and my stitched rectangle die. And I'm going to show you a trick here too. So we want this, just eyeball it to get it centered. Now normally when we put these through, we tend to lay them like this, right? And when we go to pull it through, you hit this flat edge and it takes a lot of effort to get that through. And sometimes it wants to jump and then behind it doesn't always cut very well. So what I have learned is if I just put this at an angle, whenever I have like a straight edged kind of a die, if possible, I put it at as much of an angle as I can. Obviously, you have to be careful you don't extend your cardstock over the edge. And then I'm going to add this to my sandwich. I probably should put the base plate on there first, you think? It's probably going to be really helpful. And again, I'm going to stagger it a little bit so you can see I've got that staggered. Now this is at an angle and I'll just stagger this back just a little bit more. Now, because it's at an angle, there is very little extra effort to get that through. Or if I was running up against that straight edge of that die, it takes a good amount of effort to crank that and get it going. Plus I get a better cut. Now it looks like this moved a little bit on me. I probably should have used some washi tape, but this is just a show you how. I'm not going to make a complete card. So here's my frame. And the main thing here now I want to show you is how to get this to look like an extension of the piece you've just done. So let me bring back in my toilet paper. The first thing I'm going to do is just trim this off around the cardstock. I made the cardstock a little bit smaller than the outside of the pool party, so I can just trim it. None of this is going to show. Now, to figure out how to position this in my embossing folder, that's where it gets a little tricky. So let me look for my embossing folder. Where did I put it? I just had it. Here it is. Got too many pieces here today. All right, so we want this to lay approximately like this. And I could have moved it down a little bit further, but I didn't cut it that way, so we're going to leave it right here. My main thing here is to just show you how to get this aligned. So normally if I was going to emboss the blue, this is how we would put it in. So what I'm going to do in this case is I am going to lay this piece on this side, and you can feel, if you can't feel it, you can see it on the back side, and line it up with the folder. Now the embossing does also tend to fall into place, okay? Oh, I have to put this down here first. And then I have to move it around. I knew I was doing something wrong. Something just didn't make sense. Okay. So now I'm going to line this up. I don't know if you can see that. So I have the toilet paper lined up with the embossing folder. And now I can open this back up. And remove this piece without moving that one, close it, and then we will emboss it. So let's get this back over here. And I'll get my layers going again. And because this is a 3D embossing folder, we're going to use the specialty plate, just like we did before. No, we're not. Oh my goodness. Yes, we are. Am I confused today or what? I think I'm really confused today. So I'm just going to run this through. It'll be a miracle if this turns out. Oh. Too many different things going on. That's why I usually just stick to the technique. But I did want to show you how to line this up. So now this is embossed, and I should be able to bring my toilet paper embossed piece back in and lay it on top and line it up with that image. And you can see here, this, you have to play around with it just a little sometimes to get it in the right place. And there it is. Now I would take this and I would mount it on to my basic black and then onto the front of the card and add a sentiment. But now you can see that the embossed image on the border is perfectly lined up with the border on the inside. So those are the main two cards I wanted to show you today. But I said I would show you a couple of my examples that I played around with while I was practicing. So here's one from the Fern embossing folder. Pretty. Here's one from the Seashells 3D embossing folder. I hope you can see these. Sometimes it's so hard to know if you can see them or not. I can see them in my camera, but hopefully they'll show up. And then I also had made a couple, which I'm not seeing laying around right now, so we'll just stick it with those two. You can also use the smaller folders, as I mentioned. And to finish your envelopes, you can use a piece of cardstock, emboss it with a matching folder, and add it on there. Or in this case, I just bought embossed directly onto the flap of the envelope. And for that card, this one I wanted to use pool party, so I embossed a piece of cardstock. And then the last card I'm going to show you is this one here. This one I used the cane weave folder, and again, the envelope flap is embossed with that, but I wanted to show you the card just quickly. Here I used a frame technique also, similar like I did with this one, but in this case I used deckled rectangle dies, and I did not emboss it. I just left it plain. And this is with the little Easter bunnies. It's an Easter card for a special friend. And this one I will have posted on my blog later today. This will have all the dimensions and step-by-step instructions on how to do this one, including written instructions for how to do the toilet paper embossing. So, and there will be links there to this video on the tutorial as well, in case something doesn't make sense and it's easier to have the tutorial in front of you. That will be on my blog, Fearless Stampin' Flair, later today. So those are the 3 cards. The inside of this one, I just stamped the flower. On the bottom, I had a little scrap piece of the toilet paper left over. That was embossed when I trimmed it, as you saw how I trimmed, so I just stuck that on there. And then on this one, I embossed a strip of white cardstock and tore it and put that on the bottom. So those are my 3 cards. I hope you like those. I hope you understand the technique. I know it was a little rough today, but let me flip my camera back. All right, I'm back. I hope this worked. I know sometimes I get my plates mixed up and I have to back up, but I'm sure you've all been there. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great rest of your day today and a great weekend. Kathy will be back next week with another technique or tip or trick. I'm sure it'll be great. I'm not sure what it's going to be right now. I say that we do have a planned out list. We're not totally unorganized. We do have things planned, but sometimes the mood changes our minds at the last minute. So we do something different. So I don't want to commit her to anything, but whatever she does, it'll be great. Her cards are always beautiful, aren't they? So if you enjoyed today's video, I hope you'll share it with your friends and subscribe to help us grow our channel. So again, have a great day and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.